Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Bite Size History. I'll be your host, Audrey Durham, and in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the food and lifestyles of Paleolithic era humans. We're also going to be taking a look at the Paleolithic diet as people consider following it today. I'm going to be making a recipe based on one of the recipes that people might make for the Paleo diet, and we're going to take a look at where each ingredient comes from. Let's take a look at our learning goal today before we get into our lesson. Our learning target for today's lesson is to identify the time period and culture of the Paleolithic people as hunter-gatherers who discovered fire, painted cave walls, and made simple tools. Most of what we know about hunter-gatherer cultures comes from modern-day tribes who still practice hunting and gathering as their lifestyle. This information is then processed by historians and archaeologists and applied to what they find left behind from that prehistoric era. This means that much of what is found is open to interpretation, similar to the cave paintings we discussed in our previous episode on Paleolithic art. What we know is that hunter-gatherers lived off of the land and did not grow their own food as we do today. They collected wild fruits, berries, nuts, grasses, and other vegetation, as well as hunted wild game like bison, deer, horses, and rabbits. Seafood was also on the menu for those who lived near the water. Most hunter-gatherer societies traveled across the land and followed the seasons to have as much continuous food as possible. Fire was one of the major changes for Paleolithic-era humans, as it allowed them to eat more varieties of food, and the meats that they ate were easier to chew and easier to digest. It may have also helped with any illnesses caused by uncooked meats that the tribe faced. Hunter-gatherer societies may have had a level of equality between men and women. While it is traditionally believed that men were the hunters and women the gatherers, there is evidence to suggest that women may have also participated in the hunts. And it's time to compare the coastal and inland diets of hunter-gatherers. And let's take a look at what the inland diet may have been for hunter-gatherers as well. The inland diet would have consisted of big game animals such as deer, elk, reindeer, woolly mammoths, and buffalo or bison, as well as small game such as birds, rabbits, squirrels, and other species that could be trapped or hunted. The gathering portion of this society would have consisted of berries, nuts, seeds, local grasses, and sometimes even wild rice and other grains. Paleolithic-era humans would have eaten as much of these sweet foods, such as fruits and berries, as they could when found, which might be why sweet flavors still trigger humans to eat more than needed to this day. Root vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, and a variety of different foods would have been available to both inland and coastal dwellers. While societies might have specific hunting grounds they visited each year, they would also migrate for the seasons and therefore may spend time in both coastal and inland locations at varying times throughout the year. This also most likely allowed for more nutrient diversity in their food. Let's take a look at the coastal diet for hunter-gatherer. The coastal diet would have consisted of fish they could catch both from shore as well as likely from primitive-style boats or canoes. Oysters, clams, mussels, and other bivalves would have been collected, as well as crabs, shrimp, lobster, and different crustaceans that were attainable through trapping, spearfishing, and freediving. Kelp, along with other seaweeds or seagrasses, would have most likely been consumed as they provided much-needed nutrients that could not be gained from just meat. Gathering in this environment would have also included local grasses and tropical fruits that grew along the shorelines, such as coconuts or bananas, as well as tubers and root vegetables found in tropical and coastal climates. There's a ton of crossover between the two, and hunter-gatherers actually were very nomadic. So as they changed the seasons and shifted their locations for hunting and gathering, they more than likely may have made it both inland and to coastal environments. Now this is important to note as it would have created more diversity in the food available to hunter-gatherers. The paleo diet is actually one that has become popular in recent years. And the reason for this is because it's more so about having non-processed foods and having things as close to what they may have been like during Paleolithic era. Now, one of the biggest issues with the paleo diet is, as you will see in my upcoming recipe, most Paleolithic era humans would probably not have had access to all of these ingredients at the same time. And as they were nomadic, they more than likely would not have been able to carry them with them either. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at some foods that may be included in the paleo diet today and that would have been semi-similar at the very least to what Paleolithic era humans might have eaten during the Paleolithic era. Let's take a look at some variations of the modern paleo diet. Now, as we can see, there are a variety of foods that people still consume that would have been considered paleo and would have been consumed by cavemen, as it were, or the Paleolithic era human. First up, we're going to be looking at the meats. The meats that we have are turkey or game birds, which definitely would have been considered food for the Paleolithic era human. Probably weren't as big as they are today. However, quail, duck, pheasant, chicken, it all would have been in some variety available to them and they would have hunted them. Other varieties of meat would have included red meat. Now, beef wouldn't necessarily have been a common red meat. However, buffalo, bison, elk, deer, reindeer, they all would have been available in some location or another for the Paleolithic human hunting. Other varieties of meat not shown here would have included pork, so wild hogs. Other types of game would have been fish or shellfish, shrimp, lobster, clams, oysters, a variety of coastal diets. What we're looking at right now is going to be closer to what would have been considered an inland diet. Other items such as maple syrup, squash or gourds, honey could have all been harvested in different locations. Eggs, such as chicken eggs, were not necessarily as prevalent. However, eggs of many varieties would have been consumed, including small birds and large birds, ducks, geese, and a variety of other species. Wild herbs would have been gathered both for their nutritional value and eaten alone, as well as used to flavor different types of foods, most likely. Wild vegetables, even including asparagus, which still grows wild in different locations today, and potatoes would have been consumed. Other items such as wild fruits and berries would have been found, and fruits and berries are very specific because when these items were found, they would eat as much of them as possible, as I was discussing earlier, because you didn't know when you might come across those foods again. Seeds and nuts would have also been a variety of food, and this one would have been a traveling companion because it is very lightweight, they do not go bad quickly, and they're something that if they had any type of container, they would have been able to carry them with them. And we also have root vegetables, such as the spring onions, the regular onions, and we have garlic. Now, root vegetables would have most likely been consumed as well, and they do still grow wild in different areas of the world. But again, all of these varieties are going to look a little bit different from what Paleolithic era humans probably would have consumed. Most of our food today is much larger due to the genetic engineering and basically just cross hybridization of different species. Let's take a quick look at our ingredients for our modern paleo recipe, the Paleolithic sandwich bread, as we're calling it. First up, we have applesauce, then we have honey, psyllium husk powder, salt, apple cider vinegar, olive oil, baking soda, almond flour, and chicken eggs. All right, let's take a look at where our ingredients for this recipe came from, or might have come from, during the Paleolithic era. First up, we have apples, used in the applesauce and apple cider vinegar for this recipe, most likely originating in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. Then we move into the almond flour for the recipe, which almonds also most likely came from Central Asia and China. Chickens for the chicken eggs, traditionally used in this and many other recipes today, most likely originated in Asia as well, in Southeast Asia to be specific, and were most likely domesticated from the red jungle fowl, which is a species that still exists wild today. Olives for the olive oil used in this recipe would have come from Asia Minor, including Iran, Syria, and Palestine. The psyllium husk most likely originated in Western Asia. It is the main ingredient in items like Metamucil, and it promotes digestion as it is high in fiber. Baking soda originated actually in the 1800s in England. Now, baking soda and baking powder required for this recipe would not have actually been available during the Paleolithic era. This is one of the primary items that did not exist during that era, and the closest resemblance we actually have to baking soda during ancient times is from ancient Egypt. In 3500 BC, when a similar compound called natron was used to preserve mummies. However, in 1843, Alfred Bird, a British chemist, created baking powder for his wife, who had yeast allergies. In 1846, sodium bicarbonate was introduced but needed baking powder or another acid to work. And in 1856, modern baking powder was created by Eben Norton Horsford. Moving on, the last two ingredients include honey and salt. Now, they can be found in numerous locations of the ancient and Paleolithic world as long as weather conditions were conducive. Honey would be found wherever bees were found, and it was actually documented by the ancient Sumerian and Babylonian writings. Salt could be found from Poland, Canada, Germany, Pakistan, portions of the Himalayas, Chile, Peru, and numerous other locations around the globe. And salt was most likely also harvested from seawater in coastal locations. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the final product of my baking adventure. So here is the final product of the Paleo sandwich bread. As you can see, the Paleo sandwich bread, most likely not something a Paleolithic human would have even had the ability to create, let alone be consuming, as it does have ingredients in it that are from all over Asia, and you would have had to do a great deal of traveling in order to gain each one of these ingredients. Now that is why later in history, all of these ingredients started being able to travel over the different trade roads. Our bread, however, is delicious, it's very moist, and it's one of my new favorites. That's it for today on the food and lifestyles of the Paleolithic era human. If you like this episode, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also, follow me on Instagram and TikTok under Bite Size History with Audrey D. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can find me on Patreon as Bite Size History with Audrey Durham. I hope you enjoyed this episode today and it gave you a little bit more information on the diet and lifestyle of Paleolithic humans. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will focus on our transition and key terms from the Paleolithic era into the Neolithic age and the Bronze Age, which is also the agricultural revolution. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.